on a vacation. Fallout New Vegas set a lot of standards when it was released back in 2010. It set a high bar for Majora's Mask-style side projects that use a game's pre-existing structure and assets to make something new by totally changing everything else. It created a world full of interesting side stories and characters that are only as accessible as you are curious. Someone could have a completely fulfilling and worthwhile time with New Vegas and miss about 90% of it. It also set a standard for just how broken a game can be on release and still be considered a masterpiece. No, dude, this is the mod that finally stops the crashing. It just conflicts with System 32. Delete that and it runs like a dream. One thing New Vegas got a lot of credit for on release was its DLC, coming out in an era where DLC was still a hot topic. The idea of getting more game at a reduced price was something that game devs were still trying to figure out. And funnily, Bethesda was on both sides of the spectrum. The Horse DLC for Elder Scrolls Oblivion was considered the most worthless DLC you could buy for a game. What a beautiful world we used to live in. While the Fallout DLCs were considered some of the best value you could get for your money. The trend started in Fallout 3, with Point Lookout, Operation Anchorage, and especially the Pit being considered as good as a full game release. Oh, no, Mothership Zeta, you're not on the list. Thank you. I believe I said thank you! Fallout New Vegas had a lot of expectations following up Fallout 3, and the DLC was a big part of it. Could the game match the quality of the previous one? That's what I'm hoping to figure out by going through all 4. Now, I won't be doing these in order of release, since I wanted to tackle them in order of differentness. These 4 DLC all offer a completely different experience to the base game of New Vegas, but it's by a measure of degrees. Some of these DLC feel like totally different games, but ones like this one feel a lot more like vanilla New Vegas. To cut to the chase, we have Honest Hearts, the second DLC released, and first one I want to talk about. To tackle our trip, I'm bringing back Terror of the Wasteland and Mall Katana enthusiast, Mr. President. Her moral ethics border on coherent, and she's less spray and pray and more blast and last. Honest Hearts begins with you arriving at the Happy Trails Caravan Company, a group delivering supplies to a land called New Canaan, a settlement in Utah. Utah itself is one of those lawless wasteland states, where the order of large governing bodies like the NCR and Legion is nowhere to be found. Instead, roving gangs of murderers and brutal warlords rule the land. And then the bombs dropped. We get a few different options before the expedition begins, as well as some requirements like ditching our companions. This is a universal restriction across all the DLCs. You might get a new companion in the new area, but you can't bring your old ones. I get it, hard enough to balance a DLC around somebody as strong as Mr. President, no need to triple the firepower. Speaking of restrictions, you also have to cut your weight before joining the caravan, meaning that you have to get under 95 carry weight before starting the DLC. Out of all the ways the DLCs choose to nerf you for balancing's sake, this one has to be my favorite, since it makes you strip down to the bare essentials and makes you pick and choose between what you're actually going to need, instead of coming in with a solution to every problem. For me, medical supplies and important chems are what I'm choosing to leave behind. What's it gonna do, get shot and live? Also, if you're a Power Armor character, then you should really check out Peaceful Gardens 2 Cute Cats, because your $5 is wasted on Honest Hearts. You get the chance to talk to a few other members of the caravan who provide some fun, if pointless dialogue, and from there you head out to New Canaan. The trip there is punctuated by a brief stop in Zion Valley, home of some tribal civilizations who the rest of the caravan seems to know. Only a few seconds after stepping into the canyon, though, the rest of our group is gunned down by a new tribe called the Whitelegs. Watch me blow 2 of them away with one shotgun blast, and then tell me about your precious plasma weapons.
Oh, we can turn people into goo!
Grow up! Across a bridge and right before a second ambush can take place, a new tribal named Follows Chalk kills our attacker. And about 50% of people have to reload their save after instinctively shooting follows chalk. I swear there's a non-racist reason why, but I just haven't thought of it. Follows Chalk tells us we're lucky to have survived our encounter with the White Legs and takes us back to the dead horse's home. I've been looking for you my whole life. Once we arrive, we meet with the war chief of the dead horses, Mr. Price of Admission himself, Joshua Goddamn Graham. Joshua Graham is not a new character to New Vegas. A pattern that all 4 of the DLCs do really well is setting up characters and events as big deals in the base game before paying them off in the DLCs. I'll get into Joshua when we talk about the characters of the DLC, and trust me, I'll have plenty to talk about. He tasks us with finding some old world technology to help with the struggles that his tribe, the Dead Horses, are facing. The Whitelegs could prove to be too much to handle and could force them to leave Zion Valley, and these old world pieces of technology will help them survive. We actually get a reason why the Dead Horses can't solve their own problem, and that's because the pieces of technology are in marked off areas. Places that have been branded with the mark of the old world and are therefore off limits to Dead Horses. From there, the DLC opens up and you get to explore the valley. Now, going over the DLCs is tricky since the base gameplay is the same as New Vegas. You're still firing guns, passing skill checks, it's still the same. They all, however, try to do something different to vary themselves up and make each one feel like a distinctive experience. Honest Hearts, though, probably does the worst job at this since it's very similar to the base game. You get a wide open area with loads of explorable side areas that provide the 2 L's. Loot and lore. The environment itself is the most noteworthy feature of the DLC aside from Joshua, with the game switching from the Mojave to Zion National Park. The park is an aesthetic that you'd never see in the base game save for... F you. The brick and mortar of New Vegas is replaced with worn down wooden architecture, surrounded by greenery and tall rock formations. The DLC is all about verticality. You'll be climbing all the time, either up paths or Skyrim horsing your way up cliff faces. Come on game, we both know I'm not giving up. Oh, thank goodness, a bobby pin. This gives the location the feeling of a guided tour as each quest takes you to every notable landmark on the map, and it kinda plays into a hand-holding feeling the DLC gives off. The main quests you get amplify this by a lot, with the first round being Joshua sending you off to pick up the vaunted old world tech of a compass, walkie-talkie, and some lunchboxes. Imagine hearing your best friends be gunned down on the other end of a Hulk walkie-talkie. These are bad quests. The idea that these are treated as 3 different quests is ridiculous. Each one threatens to be interesting, but gives up pretty quickly. Oh, the cabinet has the walkie-talkies in it, but I can't lockpick it. I have some innovative ideas. Oh no, wait, the key was 1 room over in the only box in the entire building, okay. One of the things that makes Fallout, approaching situations in different ways depending on your build, is completely missing from all the quests in this DLC, save for the final moral choice in the entire thing. Instead, the whole thing is fetch quests, traveling through the park from location to location to pick up stuff. Are we at least finding cool stuff on the way? Mostly no. The park is intentionally very low tech. You don't see many cool weapons or pieces of gear during your time in the park. There's only one, but it really only appeals to me. You have no idea how long I've waited for this. Each of the DLCs kind of focus on different traits and skills, and Honest Hearts just draws the short straw. While other ones get cool skills like speech, guns, and stealth, Honest Hearts is focused on melee, unarmed, and survival. Some of the skills I never take when playing New Vegas. So the equipment you can pick up and bring back to the base game isn't really up to snuff. And as for the armor, forget it, nobody wears armor! What they do wear is comparable to standard Raider armor, which isn't appealing, either stat-wise or aesthetic. The encounters in this DLC are also really easy, thanks to the Whitelegs' lack of good armor and weapons and focus on melee combat. If you come at them with a gun, they're kinda helpless. The DLC's low level cap also means it's going to be a really easy experience overall. Like, you're never going to struggle against the mantises or ants, and you're only going to have trouble with the higher level whitelegs who have brush guns and the Yao Guai. But with an endgame build, you're like a hot knife through butter in Zion. Oh, Traveler, please, don't mess with that tutorial Yao Guai.
Chalk, check this out, I'm gonna shoot it up the butt!
The final encounter where you're taking on the whitelegs in the final raid can be hard, but it's mostly down to the turf you're fighting on being theirs and giving them the advantage. But one moment of difficulty is not enough for a mostly easy ride. With how much the other DLCs switch up the gameplay and structure of the game itself, especially the one right before this in release order, it feels like Honest Hearts is a very safe DLC. It's also the shortest DLC by a mile. Even if you speed blitz the other ones, ignoring all the side content and don't talk to anybody, you're still probably gonna finish Honest Hearts faster. It's just those two main quests, a final siege mission, and a smattering of side content to keep you occupied. Nowadays, when the thing is only $5, it's not as bad, but back when these were being released and this had to follow up dead money, oh, I can't imagine how bad it must have felt to see just how short it was. As for those side quests, they're there. Aside from the one that's different, the rest are all super simple. There's getting a baby bighorner back to its herd, fighting a ghost bear, cute ideas that have no depth. Now, I know this hasn't been a very positive talk about Honest Hearts, and it sounds like this is the worst DLC by default. And that's kind of the reputation that Honest Hearts has gotten for a long time. Honest Hearts is the bum wheel on the New Vegas DLC shopping cart, always outshone by the other three and seen as the worst. And while I'm not sure yet whether or not I'd call it the worst, I do want to highlight the aspects that do make it better than some full games, even with all its flaws. Aside from the environment, the best thing Honest Hearts has going for it is its characters. 2 out of the 5 of them, okay, like with everything else in Honest Hearts, the characters have a few issues. Some are undercooked, others are burnt. But then you find the 2 of them that are just right and make for some of the best characters in Fallout. To get the negative out of the way, you get 2 followers in this campaign, Follows Chalk and Waking Cloud. They're fine, I guess. Both of them are pretty simple, never get focused on, and only Waking Cloud has a quest tied to her that's over and about 3 interactions. Follows Chalk, though, is on my shit list because he gives you the bighorner quest I mentioned earlier. Alright, buddy, let's go save that baby! And I'll try not to kill any bighorners like you asked. Oh, looks like they're aggressive, but not attacking.
Chalk, what the fuck? Why are you shooting them, you dipshit?
For all the praise the followers get, even the DLC ones, these 2 are never brought up. To balance that out, though, is Joshua Goddamn Graham. Joshua is a former legate of Caesar's Legion. You know, the same position that served as the final boss? This guy was just as tough. He was Caesar's first and most important companion, training tribes in the way of war and brutally enacting Caesar's will upon everybody they passed who didn't fall into line. After failing at Hoover Dam and leading his men into the ambush of Boulder City, Joshua was made an example of, tossed into the Grand Canyon while on fire. Joshua didn't die, instead dragging his useless body for 3 months back to New Canaan where he was patched up. Caesar found out he was alive and tried to have him assassinated, promising the Whitelegs entry into the Legion if they razed New Canaan to the ground and finally got rid of Joshua. While New Canaan did fall, meaning our trip was ultimately doomed to fail, Joshua lived. Him and the remaining New Canaanites fled to Zion Valley, where they were accepted by the 2 tribes who lived there, the Sorrows and Dead Horses, acting as their leaders, with Joshua leading the Dead Horses. With everything we've now learned, you'd expect the first meeting with Joshua to be like meeting Caesar all over again. But entering his den and talking to him, Joshua is anything but unwelcoming.
We should have given you a better welcome on your first visit to Zion. But from what I hear, the Whitelegs beat us to it. Whitelegs seem to be the only visitors we have these days, and I wouldn't have expected anyone from the Mojave to come looking for us. And you're a courier, no less. Not the one I was expecting, but I suppose he wouldn't have come with a caravan. I don't know if you were close to the other members of your group, but you have my sympathy. I pray for the safety of all good people who come to Zion, even Gentiles. But we can't expect God to do all the work.
Joshua is immediately a disarming and affectionate man. What you'd think would be grizzled threats are instead comforting apologies and condolences for the ambush a few minutes ago. He's understanding, kind, but still clearly the most capable killer in the entire valley. He doesn't make threats, he gives spoilers. Before ever joining up with Caesar, Joshua was a Mormon missionary, and faith is a central part of Joshua's character. His belief in God and his teachings inform almost everything Joshua does, giving some of the best quotes you'll ever hear as a result. At the same time, his religious beliefs run up against his extremely violent nature. The dead horses under Joshua have become much more capable fighters than the Sorrows, and it's a point of contention between the two tribes and their leaders. Is Joshua doing the right thing, or is his violent nature endangering the tribe by putting them in harm's way? You can see that Joshua, consciously or not, is training the dead horses like he trained the Legion. Joshua is tied to his past. The actions he took, how it's influencing his present, the Whitelegs acting as a mini Caesar's Legion, while making them flat as a goddamn sheet of paper, does make them great for making Joshua ultimately responsible for his own suffering. None of the pain that he endured would have happened without his own actions. Talking to Joshua is the source of most of the enjoyment in Honest Hearts, dissecting his words and understanding what he really believes in. Against all odds, he did survive his fall into the canyon. What other explanation could there be besides God forgiving Joshua and allowing him to live again, atoning for his sins by helping the dead horses? As a religious man, it's an explanation that Joshua fully accepts and puts everything into enacting upon. This inevitably, though, ties his wrath and his faith together, as the practicality of killing the Whitelegs lines up with his duty of helping the dead horses. He says that killing is just a chore, but the Whitelegs took his family, took away his redemption that God gave him. His fury is all his own, and he wants God to be his holy shield, a filter he can use to justify his own terrible bloodlust. The best ending isn't following the extermination plan that Joshua sets out, it's allowing Salt Upon Wounds, the leader of the Whitelegs, to escape by appealing to Joshua's faith, getting him to admit that he wants revenge. Only by admitting to his own faults is Joshua able to improve. I think the strength of Joshua's character is in the framing of the man himself. Joshua is a terrible man trying to do better, and it doesn't make a definitive statement on if he's good or bad. Just like the best parts of Fallout, the answer isn't that clear. He says a lot of cool and sympathetic stuff, but also a lot of dark and evil-sounding stuff. Hard to call somebody truly good when they talk about smashing newborn heads against rocks. He's done some horrible things, but he's doing good things for the dead horses. He wants what's best for the tribes of Zion, but what he thinks is best might be their undoing. Ultimately, the job of deciding how you feel about Joshua Graham is your choice to make. That said, the overwhelming response in the fanbase is support for Joshua. He's the most popular DLC character bar none, and his words are so powerful that more than a few people have cited joining or returning to religion because of Joshua. In that he has become a weapon greater than any gun or bomb, a fucking badass Mormon. I choose to see Joshua as a representation of religion itself, battling to balance the Bible's message of empathetic love with wrathful vengeance. Joshua Graham is one of the most interesting and compelling game characters you'll ever encounter, and getting to visit Zion Valley to meet him is worth the money of the DLC alone. I mean, though, it's not hard to side with him when you see the other option. Has anybody ever sided with Daniel except to see what the ending with him is like? Daniel is the Caesar's Legion of Honest Hearts, in that you don't pick him because you agree with him, you pick him because you have to catalog it for the wiki. Daniel is the leader of the Sorrows, a fellow New Canaanite like Joshua, and overall toilet water drinker. I hate him so much. Okay, so why does Daniel suck? He seems like the more peaceful option opposed to Joshua's kill-em-all strategy. Well, he is, but it comes at the consequence of him being the biggest f***ing dork in the valley. Daniel's counter-proposal to Joshua's extermination is to flee Zion Valley with the Sorrows to escape the Whitelegs to preserve their innocence so they don't have to fight. Okay, so you'd like to think there are some good intentions here because it does sound nice, but thinking about it for more than a few minutes is enough to drive you mad. Okay, preserve their innocence. You mean baby them? Treat these grown adults like they're children who need to be protected? By who? Some asshat named Daniel? He infantilizes and talks down to the Sorrows, calling them simple and in need of help. Like he's been there for the tribe's entire history, when really he's a Larry-come-lately. And what's his plan? Take the Sorrows and move them somewhere else? So the lesson he wants to impart upon them is that if somebody comes along and wants the thing you have, give it to them and hope to get away before the piss patch forms? Really? In a world where there's a 50-50 shot that the next person you meet is going to want to kill you, you want the Sorrows to live in constant pant-shitting terror of everybody around them, moving whenever any conflict arises? Joshua's plan to raise a tribe of warriors is bad, but so is raising a tribe of cowards. Joshua, though, for as bad as his plan is, and it is bad, at least means that if something happens to him, the dead horses have something to keep them going. Without Daniel leading the Sorrows by the nose, they'd be lost little children pulling at the pant leg of the first warlord they find to either wipe them out or make them warriors. There's a lot of white savior talk in how Daniel speaks to and about the Sorrows. They need him around to shield them from the horrors of the real world. Not just the wasteland, but real life. With Waking Cloud's husband being dead, Daniel chooses for Waking Cloud to not let her know about his death. This is all in the pursuit of some completely impractical ideal of innocence. Great for a child, but Waking Cloud is having children. She's an adult. They're all adults. But Daniel has decided that this innocence he's obsessed with is more important than their own agency and development. I'll admit that I'm coming at this from an aggressive point of view. There are more charitable ways to look at Daniel, and very compelling arguments have been made for it. I understand that the character he's trying to go for is he doesn't know if it's the right idea to introduce violence to the Sorrows. He doesn't want them to know that violence is a way to get what you want, because that's not a good way to live. But I just hate him so much. Anybody will end up hating Daniel if you tie him into the final story of the DLC and Joshua's biggest sin. See, everybody plays Honest Heart for Joshua. Burned Man, very cool. I see his quotes in home goods on scented candles. The scent is burning flesh. However, his popularity has kind of outshone the actual best character in the DLC. And it's one you never meet. See, after meeting up with Waking Cloud, you learn more about the belief system of the Sorrows and how they worship the Father in the Cave. This was a figure that helped to nourish and protect the first generation of Sorrows who arrived in Zion, and whose caves are dotted around the map for you to investigate. Entering any one of them shows dozens of booby traps, mines, and grenade nests that will blow apart anybody who enters them. Managing to get past them leads you to 5 different terminal entries, each one demystifying the story of the Father in the Cave. His real name was Randall Clark, an ex-military man who was caught outside during the Great War and retreated to Zion Valley. He had a wife and child, but they presumably died in the initial blasts. The terminal entries detail his life in Zion, from his attempts to survive to his observation of a colony of Spanish speakers who tried living in the valley, before being attacked and eaten by a militia of Vault 22 dwellers. He spends the next year hunting and killing them in revenge, before finding one of them in a bear trap. She was innocent, and Randall let her live with him. They became close. She became pregnant. Randall was scared for the first time since the bombs dropped. The baby breaches, Michael dies. The vault dweller is bleeding out, Randall has to put her down, Sylvie dies. Randall buries them, Randall dies. Randall contemplates suicide every birthday for the next 10 years, trying to get drunk enough to dull his reason long enough to do it, but every time he chickens out. It's not until he's 60 years old that he finds another reason to live. The Sorrows. A group of 24 kids, half boy and half girl, arrive in the valley, and for the next year he does everything he can to help. He leaves them food, supplies, notes of encouragement, everything he can do to give them a chance. The messages only stop when his health finally fails him. The final message he leaves tells them that he'll always be watching over them to give them hope, and he retires to the top of a rock formation nobody can reach to expire in peace, now that he got to see real innocence in the Sorrows before he passed. You can find his body, as well as the message containing that last bit of info, a unique rifle, and factionless NCR Ranger armor. The Survivalist story is the best story in Fallout New Vegas. It's a harrowing, poignant, and hopeful story about the aspects of Fallout that make it so good. If Joshua's story makes people find religion, Randall's story makes them want to stay alive. It's in his final entry that we get to see what makes Daniel's path unreasonable and wrong for somebody like me. I tell them I'm giving them Zion as a gift to make up for all the sorrows of their lives so far and all the sorrows man has visited on man. I tell them to be kind to each other and modest. I tell them to never hurt each other, but that if somebody comes along and tries to hurt them, to strike back with righteous anger. Randall's message to the Sorrows is that you need to preserve your goodness, but not at the expense of your rights. The man who lived in Zion and kept it from becoming a cannibal wonderland left the responsibility of looking after it and enjoying its splendor to the children that would become the Sorrows. For Daniel to instead tell them they need to leave is not only disrespecting the final gift of Randall Clark, but also puts his belief system above the Sorrows. The religion they've followed for their entire history should be uprooted and disregarded because of what Daniel wants to do. He says stuff like that a lot, saying that the Sorrows will outgrow their primitive beliefs. Shut up, dude! If it weren't for Joshua, you'd be debating your god right now. Ultimately, I'm torn on Honest Hearts. I think as far as gameplay goes, easily the weakest. Story and character-wise, easily one of the strongest. I think that while the story does rival the best the base game and series as a whole has to offer, the minute-to-minute gameplay is unfortunately dull and not interesting. If I had to sum it up, I guess I'd say that Honest Hearts is the perfect DLC to start out with because it really only gets better from here. You should play it, but in the way you'd play all the DLCs. It's the only one that feels like an obligation. Farewell, Zion National Park. May your wonders stay uncorrupted, and may the grand staircase Daniel falls down be a steep one. What's that sound? President's Log. Day 2 of the Summer of No Regrets has yet again taken a regretful turn as I have somehow ended up on Mars. My ass is still firm and I have a samurai sword, but my head weighs significantly less, I'm colorblind like a dog, and I've forgotten which button on my tape recorder is record. I'll keep you up to date on the rest of the events of today. Moving on to the next DLC I wanted to talk about is Old World Blues, the DLC following Honest Hearts, and the third DLC released overall. The DLCs have an order that you're definitely supposed to play them in for story reasons, but I still found that a scattershot approach to the first 3 works fine. After arriving in this giant tower, we can head through a few doors to find... Dude, I don't got the f***ing time for this! These 5 friendly screens are the scientists of Big Mountain, the place we've found ourselves in. Big Mountain is a science research center established before the war that was dedicated to solving the world's problems and creating technology to rocket humanity into the future. Soon though after the war, the site was damaged by the bombs dropping, prompting the 6 head scientists to transfer themselves into robotic bodies with only their brains preserved. The brains in front of us are 5 of them: Klein, Boros, O, 8, and Dala, with the final brain, Mobius, appearing behind us and threatening the rest of the think tank with destruction. Correct, that doesn't sound like my problem at all. Except when I was taken here, the doctors slapped me in the auto dock, which found out I had been shot in the head not a long time ago and decided to remove my brain, heart, and spine. While this will make headbutts a lot safer and allow me to finally touch my toes the long way, I do kinda want my heart back, so I guess we gotta help. To make up for the impromptu organ donation, we do get some robotic replacements to help out that gift us truly some of the most overpowered perks in the game. Heartless increases chem effectiveness, stops poisoning, and reduces robot critical hit rates by 50%. Hold on, why do I want my parts back? It would be awkward to be the only person in the room with a robot spine. Alright, let's get a move on. That move on will have to wait until after the single longest uninterrupted dialogue tree in the entire game. If you listen to everything the think tank has to say, you're gonna be here for over half an hour. Okay, this kinda plays into an issue with the DLC, but it's a wider one than just this conversation. As for right now, I'll just say, it's too long. Your mission statement is going to sound really similar to Honest Hearts. You're tasked with going to a bunch of different areas and collecting technology that the think tank wants from you. What makes it a lot better than the examples in Honest Hearts, though, is that they actually have quests and challenges tied to them. Not just go to a place, pick up a thing, optional, turn to the left to get a different thing first. No, instead, Old World Blues will have you doing loads more to get everything you need. Just in the first batch of things you need to collect, you'll be running through a demented high school with the halls flooded with robot dogs and turrets, climbing to the top of a satellite dish and ripping out the most weapon-shaped part of it, and running quality assurance tests for a piece of stealth armor. These 3 alone provide way more variety than the quests in Zion, and I instantly found them to be way more fun. Fun not just from an actual content perspective, but also from a writing perspective. While Honest Hearts is a DLC that plays things totally straight, Old World Blues is very goofy. I mean, just listen to that first quest I said. Dr. Boros recreated his old high school with the intent of running tests, when in reality it's just thinly veiled digs at old classmates who he's still beefing with. The whole DLC has a drive-in B-movie style feel to it in the best way, and that expands past the content and into the style. The DLC is meant to evoke a very specific time in American cinema with the designs of the technology, the enemies you encounter, and the vibe of the entire place. Hexagonal patterns, space-age technology, brains in jars, and robotic animals all give it a very strong sense of identity. With all of the unnatural architecture in Big Mountain, as well as the more natural stuff, like the giant gems you can find jutting out of the ground, you can instantly tell that this place is like no other in the entire wasteland. The interiors could have easily been standard lab stuff like in the base game, but each testing facility has its own feel of uniqueness, like the high school, office building, or sterilized environments you find in the first 3 objectives. A few enemies you fight are carried over from the base game, but instead of feeling like reused assets, they're given a whole new context as creations of the Big Mountain scientists. Oh, so these guys made the Cazadors? I need to kill them. I'll think about it later. Wait. No, I won't. It gives the chance for creatures you barely see in the base game, like Night Stalkers, the chance to shine. And I immediately take it all back because the spore carriers come from here. Aside from them, the new enemies include stuff like lobotomites, which in exchange for basically no armor, also have the same enhancements you do, which means they can't be crippled. You also find your fair share of Protectrons, Robo-Brains, and Cyber Police Dogs, which means finding a way to deal with robots is essential. Luckily, the DLC gives an option to every playstyle to deal with the robots, like the X2 Antenna and Sonic Disruptor, which deal with robots much better than most other items. Between those and the canine gun, you get a lot of options to deal with things depending on your playstyle. Something another DLC could really do with. On top of the much better main quests, the DLC also gives you a great set of side missions to tackle that expand on what the DLC does best: character. Are characters like Joshua and Randall Clark more interesting than the characters of Big Mountain? Absolutely, never ever going to argue that. But do I want to spend a lot more time in Big Mountain because the characters are so much fun? Absolutely. Picking your brains is a side mission that's purely skill checks as you talk to each member of the think tank and learn about them, what they're like, and why they turned out the way they did. They range a little. Dala and 8 don't make for the best conversation, even if 8 is one of the more interesting ones for his mysteriousness, but the rest are fantastic. They help play into the DLC's fantastic comedy, since every one of them has great delivery. The best ones are definitely Dr. Klein, Dr. O, and Dr. Mobius, voiced by Jim Ward, Chris Urbanach, and Cam Clark respectively. All three have had roles as characters in a sort of cheesy sci-fi setting before, and that really shines through in the performances. Each one has some laugh-out-loud funny moments, and maybe the funniest coming from O's picking your brain branch. It turns out his name actually isn't O, but Zero. But the two look identical when written out in computer language. Afraid I can't help you out there, Doc. Not much of a computer person. The type of hacking I prefer is usually followed by a slash. Slash, 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 slash. Why not put a slash through it?
What?
That what is the funniest joke in the entire game. Getting the chance to talk to the think tank individually, though, does help something else come into view. It's a good thing the DLC is as funny as it is, because if it wasn't, this would be the most harrowing location in the wasteland. What was meant to be a site for scientific progress was actually a playground of unethical sciences performed by 6 people who, before the mental degradation began, were unstable and vindictive. It's funny to see Boros still hung up on his high school days, and then you realize he was probably slaughtering test subjects in here for years in order to live out some sick school fantasy. Dala's awkward affection and attraction is funny, but then you think about what she might have been doing to test subjects and it makes your skin crawl. Unlike Joshua, the game makes it clear that the think tank are terrible people who have caused untold suffering both directly and indirectly. When you do your research into the background of Big Mountain and the scientists who work here and the technology they've produced, you see just how dangerous it is to have people this unstable in charge of technology this strong. The whole of Big Mountain is just the remains of their terrible choices and monstrous experiments. Little Yangtze is an odd spot on the map that you might visit, until you start to read terminal entries and find out what it really was. Little Yangtze was a Chinese concentration camp that the US government used to throw in anybody accused of communism, and they were used as human cattle for the think tank's experiments. The think tank was built to be something that was independent from any nation, but immediately took government grants when their funding ran short, which resulted in places like Little Yangtze, where the bomb collars were tested. These bomb collars are used all across the wasteland for some of the worst things you can imagine. Eulogy Jones in Fallout 3 uses the bomb collars for the slave trade, and the ghouls inside the camp can't leave the camp without their heads being blown up. The trauma harnesses were built as a way for soldiers to be returned to camp when wounded, but the suits couldn't tell when a soldier had died from their injury, and thus kept moving around as walking corpses after they died. A Wild Wasteland exclusive feature of the trauma harnesses, referencing an episode of Doctor Who, is that the trauma harnesses will even talk using the voices of the soldiers who died in them. The Night Stalkers and Cazadors are the result of genetic tampering that they don't even fully understand. They think that the Cazador and Night Stalkers are both sterile, when I have it on good authority that they are not. One of the most disturbing rooms in the DLC is when you can take a side path to find out how they make the Robo-Brains, mixing a lobotomite and a robot into one horrible mass. What makes this room so disturbing to me is that it doesn't serve a purpose. No quest uses this room. You can just go in here, do this, and the thing basically dies 5 seconds after it's born. The process of preserving their brains has been actively eating away at them for years, and they're only getting more loopy and more dangerous. One of the scariest parts of the think tank is that the scientists do retain human emotion and have empathy, but choose to actively suppress and forget about it. Talking to Boros gives you the chance to present him with Gabe's dog bowl. Gabe was his dog from back when he had a human body, and he ruthlessly tested on him. When you present him with the bowl, Boros does show regret. He's sad, he loved Gabe, and now he's dead. And he realizes now that he did horrible things to something that unconditionally loved him. But because reflecting on those thoughts is too painful, Boros instead chooses to flush out the information and block it out entirely, rejecting his humanity in the favor of science. These 5 are some of the worst people in the entire wasteland, and the only thing keeping them from total global domination is the constant string of threats from Dr. Mobius. Speaking of which, my lack of focus on Mobius isn't out of a lack of things to say. Quite the opposite. Mobius is probably the most interesting and best written of the 6. By the end of the DLC, after taking out his Robo-Scorpion army, which is one of the funniest reused assets in the game, we get to talk to him, and the Saturday morning cartoon villain who stole our brain is replaced with a kind, gentle old man who can't pronounce half the words he says. He's funny, but it only takes a few dialogue options to realize he's the one responsible for keeping the think tank trapped in Big Mountain. He forced a data loop onto them that keeps the think tank from taking in new information, and therefore stopping them from figuring out a way to escape. Objectively, that's a horrible thing to do, and it's in line with what one of these think tank freaks would do. Mobius was still involved in all the horrible things the think tank was up to before the war and is not some moral paragon. That said, it's the best thing anybody at the think tank has ever done. Unleashing the technology trapped in the dome into the wasteland could cause untold devastation, and Mobius has essentially given up his own life to spend the rest of theirs as their villain, repeating the same process infinitely until eventually their machines break. It's not easy to get meaning out of Mobius's words, considering how silly they are, but there is a through line of sadness, that things have gotten this bad, because he's had to do terrible things to people he considers friends. Mobius is still far from a good person, but of the 6 of them, he's the closest to being on the level, ironically. He's the only one who realized that science, for the sake of science, is ridiculous, and the pursuit of things like the Night Stalkers, trauma harnesses, and the insistence on using live, lobotomized test subjects showcases a total lack of regard for the humanity they're trying to help. Big Mountain's limitless freedom gave way to limitless cruelty, as the idea of everything being for the good of mankind absolved them of any wrongdoing, and if they ever felt any guilt, they would willingly expunge it. A lighter side mission comes in the form of All My Friends Have Off switches. After getting your mission from the think tank, you get a room in the central building to act as your home base. It includes loads of different features like a bed, chest, auto dock, as well as more supplementary things like a jukebox, garden, and light switches. Every one of these things has a personality core associated with it that you have to scavenge across the mountain to find. And doing so is so worth it because some of the most charming one-note characters are found in these few rooms. The feuding light switches, the smooth-talking jukebox, the sedacious material-destroying book burner, the pyromaniacal toaster. These are only a few, and they're all incredibly memorable. Having to scour the mountain for their personality cores and the upgrades you can get for them means you get to explore every spot on the map for a reward that feels worth it, getting to experience more fun little characters in the sink. I think what makes so many people like All My Friends Have Off switches is that it is small. This doesn't really impact the story of the DLC. It gives you some nominal stat boosts and items that you might want, but you do it because you want to. You do the quest because you want to get more friends. All of the personalities in the sink are fun to listen to. They have fun writing, fun interactions. You do it because it's fun. Now, as much as I love this DLC, I can still tell you there are a few issues. The most subjective one is that all that dialogue never stops. I'd wager you get maybe a few minutes of dead air in the whole DLC. Someone or something is always talking or butting in with something. From the think tank members, to Mobius announcements, to the stealth suit, you rarely get a moment's peace. That's a problem on its own, but the subjective part is that if you don't find the humor funny, oh my god, this DLC is unbearable. Now, I do find it all funny, but I'm saying that if you don't, then this DLC will be an absolute chore to get through because it never stops. My real problem is that if you want to fully upgrade the sonic emitter and stealth suit, you have to redo their associated challenges multiple times, and it gets old fast. Having to sneak through the same building over and over again, or running and gunning through the same school is a hassle that you have to repeat 3 times to fully upgrade and get everything you need to 100% the DLC. You don't need to do it, but what, are you just gonna walk out there in stealth gloves and have really sneaky hands? Get dressed, son, you're embarrassing the president. Unlocking a lot of the DLC's content is a slog in these repeat challenges, and that's a huge problem. Aside from those, though, and it might be a bit early to say this, but Old World Blues is the best of the 4 DLCs. It's funny, grim, an enjoyable but unique experience from the base game. And this sort of setting is so interesting, it could have propped up its own solo game. When you want to tackle it is all up to you with that information. Whether you want to play it up front and get the story started off on a good foot, or save dessert for last, it's still going to be just as great. After having a debate with your own brain and convincing the think tank to stay in Big Mountain, we get back our brain, heart, and spine, and get to go home. President's Log, Day 2, still. I just got finished with the world's most f***ed recreation of The Wizard of Oz and am ready to take my leave. I think they said the exit was through a tunnel, or that it might have been trouble. Brain and ears still aren't working together. Professional differences, I guess. I'm sure I'll find something eventually. Presidents! Oh, f*** it, I'm not gonna listen back to these. I've been crawling through tunnels for the past 3 days. Or maybe I just passed out 3 times, I can't remember. I'm looking for somewhere more comfortable to collapse until I can find a way home. Oh, thank God, a radio. I wanted to listen to some Dean Dumb. I fucking hate my life! Dead Money was the first DLC released, but I felt way more comfortable talking about it after Honest Hearts and Old World Blues, since those still played like Fallout New Vegas. Dead Money, however, is a totally different game. After you get knocked out, you wake up in what looks like a villa as a hologram above a fountain talks to you. This is Father Elijah, a rogue Brotherhood of Steel scribe who's been capturing people and fitting them with bomb collars. This is yet again another character who first appears in the base game, when only spoken about, before finally making his on-screen debut in the DLC. Father Elijah was a huge part of the Brotherhood of Steel losing their foothold in Helios 1, which led to the chapter having to go underground, and giving the NCR a valuable outpost. From there, he would end up wandering the wastelands towards Big Mountain, before finally ending up at the Sierra Madre. What for? He needs a team of people to help break into the Sierra Madre Casino, an old-world monolith that contains infinite resources, the type of thing that could build an empire out of nothing. The only problem is that the trigger to open the gates is set to the casino's own grand opening, which was cancelled by the bombs. The mechanisms to pull it all off are still there, all that's left is to actually do it. Elijah's got 3 other captives already, but he needs us to get them, bring them here, and then get them into position to start the heist. We got the wild card, the wild card, the wild card, the wild card, and the wild card. Are there any actual cards in this deck? But nobody tells Mr. President what to do. Go backgammon your... Take a slot full of... I don't know anything about casinos, but screw you anyway! Guys, I don't think he's bluffing. Where the previous DLCs took away a few of your options, be them guns or organs, Dead Money strips you down to your radioactive skivvies, giving you some rags and an energy rifle called a hollow rifle. The weapons you get for the non-energy weapon classes are pretty weak. Some pistols, an automatic rifle, and knives are the best you're going to be getting, which makes combat very challenging. But that's kind of the point. Just by looking at Dead Money, you can tell it's not the same as the base game or other DLCs. Dead Money takes the route of using Fallout's systems to make a horror game. Combat is ineffective. Enemies are difficult to get around and everywhere. And there's a sense of dread cloaking the entire place, both metaphorically with the oppressive weight and literally with the thick fog. This cloud is a big mountain invention that slowly kills anybody who stays in it for too long. In exchange for some of their tech, the owner of the Sierra Madre allowed the big mountain scientists to test out the cloud in his casino. To try to counteract the cloud, the workers wore special suits to keep it from coming into contact with their skin and keep it out of their lungs, only for the cloud to corrode the suit locks and trap people inside. The clouds have given something back, though. Ghost people are some of the most durable enemies in the entire game. Killing them only temporarily paralyzes them. To stop them for good, you need to destroy their limbs. This means you're going to need to keep a melee weapon on hand to hack them up once they die. If you think the wimpy weapons you get in this DLC are going to be enough to blow off limbs, you're dead wrong. Moreover, you're going to want to save those bullets and energy charges for the living enemies. You're not going to have many to go around. Supplies in this DLC are extremely hard to come by. Very hard locks and safes are only hiding a stim pack and some dirty water. You might find a pistol or some bullets, but none of them are going to do much damage. It makes every encounter, regardless of level, weapon, or even if you have a companion, feel like a nightmare because you might not have enough to make it back to home base. And even if you do, are you actually going to have enough to go back out? It makes you worry about supplies in a way that you only do during the very early game of New Vegas, and replicates the feeling of powerlessness you felt back then. There's also a very limited amount of healing items. Stim packs are super uncommon outside of supply caches left by one of the captives, and 3 stim packs at a time isn't going to do much when you usually need 3 just to get back to 100%. They're gonna be used for broken limbs just to keep you running fast and hitting your shots. If you think you're going to have a surplus in the early game of Dead Money, no way. The lack of access to the easiest healing item in the game means you're going to have to rely a lot more on healing food and drink items, which aren't as effective and can up your radiation, but are more readily available. Survival is yet again focused on, as crafting better food items and better weaponry is going to keep you alive a lot longer in the DLC. You can even buy more food from these Madre generation stations that take Sierra Madre chips that you can find all over the villa. Finding a big batch of these is both exciting, since it means you can afford more stuff, and annoying because you have to pick up every single chip individually. You can use these to buy basic food items, as well as other items that only become available after you find the codes for them hidden around the villa. Oh wait, you can find the stim pack code at one of the first locations you visit. I should really think before wasting everybody's time. That way I can waste more of it! Okay, so the stim pack stimulus problem from the base game, where they're just so much better than all the other healing items that you would never consider using anything but a stim pack, is still here, and just as bad. You could spend 20 chips on a new tin of junk food, or you could start taking things seriously! I ended the game with a 20 stim pack surplus. These little bastards are hard to balance around. As for the recruiting to get people to join the heist, the first person we find is a super mutant named Dog, who's been locked in the villa's police station. Entering for the first time tips you off to a huge part of the DLC that takes the tension of the ghost people, fog, and limited supplies and ratchets it even higher: the radios. See, these bomb collars are testy. the best thing a bomb can be. The jury rigging to get them to work the way they do now gave them a nasty habit of going off if interfered with by old-world radio signals. If you stand too close to a radio, your collar will start to beep. Stay close, it beeps faster. Still don't move, and the beeping will stop, along with most sounds and breathing. The radios can be turned off, but they're often hidden or obscured. Doubly so with wall-mounted speakers that can be hidden in nooks of the architecture that you never notice. There's also the non-destructible kind that you just kinda have to brute force your way through without stopping. These take the rooms you're allowed to catch your breath in and further breaks them up and makes it so you only have small pockets of land to catch your breath in that aren't covered in gas, ghosts, or gabeeping. It can be tense and nerve-wracking, but man, later in the game does it get frustrating to have to maneuver between enemies in forced stealth sections and find out paths are blocked off by what are pretty much invisible walls of head-exploding beeps. By the end of the campaign, you'll go from fearing the beeping, to dreading it, to just getting annoyed by it. Getting the chance to finally talk to Dog in the police station, and we finally get to talk about the best cast of characters in all of the DLCs. The think tank was funny, but the Dead Money Heist gang are all super deep and interesting characters for totally different reasons. Dog doesn't want to talk to you. The only person he's willing to talk to is his master, Father Elijah. In order to get anything out of Dog, you have to go down to the basement of the police station, get an audio tape, and play it for Dog, which calls out his alternate personality, God. Dog is a mindless beast who does Elijah's bidding out of a need for validation, while God is a cunning and well-spoken man who has to keep Dog locked away to avoid getting into more trouble. It seems like a simple dynamic, but getting to talk to Dog and God individually shows a lot more depth. God isn't some evil alter ego despite how he sounds. He's way more of a split personality formed in response to the trauma Dog underwent as a result of being from the original batch of super mutants made by the Master. God really cares for Dog, and only takes over to protect Dog from things he can't protect himself from. Dog is perfectly capable physically, but mentally he's very weak. Dog, though, hates the idea of losing control and being locked away by God. So whenever God does try to take him over, he'll hurt himself to try to silence the voice in his head, even locking a bear trap around his own arm. The pain doesn't work because it actually silences God, it only works because God doesn't want Dog to hurt himself. The conclusion of their story is Dog, a perpetual victim and slave to others' whims, whether it be Elijah or God's, finally takes control and is planning on blowing up the Sierra Madre with gas. Trying desperately to break into the kitchen to stop him, as Dog and God argue, with Dog accepting death as an escape from his victimhood, is heart-wrenching. Because God saying Dog has a childish intellect isn't just about his awareness, but also his fragility. Dog really can't comprehend what's going on around him and has only just acknowledged how bad things really are for him. You can talk him out of it and either kill him, force him to forever submit to God, or merge Dog and God into one personality to finally be on the same page. Doing that erases their memory and personalities. There's no longer Dog or God, there's just whatever's left behind after the two merge. It's sad to know that he'll never know what you did for him, but you will, and that's really all that matters. The next one is Christine, and in a really unique twist for a game like this, Christine is a mute. She can't talk after having her vocal cords tampered with by the autodoc we find her locked in, and so has to sign out what she's trying to say. Luckily, she has mastered the verbal sign language, so the animators can take a break for lunch. The fact you can't passively listen to her dialogue and have to read it all out makes you pay a lot more attention to what she's saying, and you learn a lot from what she's talking about. Christine is a Brotherhood of Steel paladin who's been tasked with hunting down Elijah, a task she's more than willing to do thanks to having personal beef with Elijah, who used his influence to separate her and her girlfriend. That girlfriend is Veronica. the Brotherhood of Steel companion you can get in the base game, another character we learn about before ever actually meeting them. Christine is obviously going to be a hard character for everybody to appreciate thanks to her unique dialogue, but I found her to be a really charming addition. She's the closest thing we got to a nice person in the DLC, considering everybody else attempts to murder us at some point, and even then she's understandably frustrated by everything she's been put through. She clearly has extreme fears stemming from her background and the situation we find her in at the beginning of the DLC. And the scene of her during the setup for the heist, where she's terrified to go down the elevator alone, is heartbreaking. By the time you make it to the casino, though, her vocal cords have healed and she's able to speak again. But as the last companion you meet up with, she has the least to say. The previous two feel much more climactic, while Christine is more open-ended. Not a knock, just something I noticed. If you want more Christine, you can actually find audio logs of her and a mysterious other courier back in Old World Blues. And they even have a different actor to go along with the fact that her vocal cords hadn't been damaged yet. Lastly is my favorite of the three companions, and the biggest piece of shit this side of whatever's left of the Mississippi, Dean Domino. This guy's the biggest bastard in the DLC, and that's including the guy who strapped a bomb to your head. Unlike Daniel, you're absolutely supposed to think that Dean Domino is a snake-shaped piece of shit. There's no other way to take him. Dean is the best example of base game foreshadowing, as instead of hearing about him or meeting a character who knows him, Dean is foreshadowed by the posters in the loading screen. Yeah, this is our intro to Dean Domino. When we do get to meet him, it's after running an obstacle course of traps you need to disarm, from grenade bouquets, rigged shotguns, and bear traps. From the moment you meet him, he's trying to get one over on you, rigging your seat to explode and scheming for how to come out of this whole heist on top. He has a dignified voice, but still sounds so skeevy and slimy. You can't trust anything he says. He's actually been around for way longer than everybody else, attending the original launch of the casino back when the bombs dropped, ghoulifying him and letting him live for as long as he has. It turns out that even back then he was planning a heist of his own when the Madre was set to open, using Starlit Vera keys to make his way in, breaking into the vault and stealing the owner Sinclair's entire fortune. The bombs, however, stopped him and put him on ice for over 100 years. Once getting inside, he's still just as eager to get in, and goes as far as to force Christine into the auto dock we find her in to change her vocal cords to match Vera's to get past a voice lock on the vault. Oh, he didn't treat the real deal any better, blackmailing Vera with her terminal illness to get her to go along with the plan and woo Sinclair. What could Sinclair have done, though? What was so horrible that he drew Dean's ire? That he would hold a centuries-long grudge with a dead man? Simple. Dean thought Sinclair thought he was better than Dean. Dean saw Sinclair's optimism and good-natured spirit following financial hardship and took it as a personal slight. He's so small and pathetic that somebody staying positive was enough for him to start a blood feud, goad him into building the casino, and try to ruin him for no reason. Reading through terminal entries, you can even find out that Sinclair was legitimately not a bad guy. He was nice, kind, and even treated the staff well, with his only failing being trusting Big Mountain and Dean Domino. This spitefulness manifests itself into gameplay too by having an alternate encounter if you pass a barter check with Dean in your first encounter. He is so upset by being outfoxed that doing this locks you out of the best ending because he can't get over that you beat him at something. Not only does this get you to think more about your options before spamming skill checks, but it also plays into his personality perfectly. Now, I know that a part of Joshua Graham's story is the question of if killing Joshua is even worth it, since it won't undo the horrible things he's done, and he's trying to do better things now. But Dean asks the same question with the interesting twist of what if he was trying to be worse? This is the ethical choice. And lastly is Elijah, the reason we're all here to begin with. Elijah is the one I have the least to say about, since you get the fewest one-on-one conversations with him that aren't filled with threats, but he still ends up being my favorite DLC antagonist. He's menacing, imposing, has the power to back up his threats around your neck at all times, and he's mad without being crazy. He's very well spoken, articulate, but you can still tell he's clearly lost it. The confrontation once you make it into the vault is one of the best exchanges in the DLC, as he dresses you down for coming here in the first place since you could have just ignored your greed or curiosity, but didn't. I think he's too far gone to have any regrets at this point, but I could see twisting that into him being regretful of his own actions. Sadly, the run-up to that vault is the worst part of the DLC. The holograms in the Madre are absurdly strong, even for an endgame build, and you're going to have to deal with their wonky view cones to get past them. Even more than the energy weapon problem earlier, you need stealth or you're gonna die. That's why the DLC gives you free armor that gives you a +10 to sneak. They know not everybody's going to have it, but still insist on forcing it. Getting to the vault itself, though, rewards you with around 35 gold bars worth tens of thousands of caps that you can't take with you because their weight is too high. This is the perfect representation of the DLC's theme of letting go of the past. You can try to keep the Madre's treasures, but it'll only end up weighing you down and you'll die in the pursuit of old world riches. It's better to escape and live a good life than it is to pay for what you could have had. Except my game crashed when I was trying to leave. The real message of dead money is to cut off Elijah's head and stuff all the gold into his mouth. Drag it to the door, put it in your pockets, and leave. Haha! I didn't learn anything! Dead Money was the DLC I was most divided on before going back for a replay. I couldn't make up my mind on it after so many playthroughs, but I can finally say that it's one of the best DLCs the game has to offer. Character-wise, gameplay-wise, story-wise, it nails a lot of stuff. It has areas for improvement, of course, but it still stands as a shining example of what an expansion can be. And now with all my gold and all my friends safe, I can finally go home. I think I left my keys with Eddie, so I need to see him soon. Okay, I know I took a wrong turn somewhere. Our final stop is to the most controversial DLC of New Vegas, Lonesome Road. It's hard to find anything about the DLC that universally gets praised in the way the others do. Honest Hearts is considered the worst, but Lonesome Road has the most varying opinions on it. It's a real love it or hate it type of DLC. The story this time around starts with you being lured into a desolate hellscape called the Divide by a radio signal. Blowing a positive a bit early here, but Lonesome Road creates a similar oppressive feeling to Dead Money, but in a much different direction. Dead Money creates a sense of dread from the atmosphere and gameplay, while Lonesome Road presents it with visuals. Fallout being post-apocalyptic, at least in the Bethesda era, has always been from a reconstruction angle. Like when we go somewhere, it's usually after people have given it a spit and shine. Lonesome Road, though, is properly f***ed up. The remains of the old world are mangled and distorted in impossible ways that give it a feeling of terror, like, wow, it's really that bad here, isn't it? You'll find buildings in positions that there's no way they could have naturally been built, only warped that way after years and years of degradation, and the bombs having recently gone off, making the whole place feel like it was just blown apart. Oftentimes when going through interiors of buildings, you'll be going at awkward angles. The floor will be on the wall, the ceiling will be upside down, there will be massive holes taken out of everything. It makes it feel like this is the end of the world. I'd say every DLC has its own unique beauty to the landscapes, and Lonesome Roads is definitely in how dystopian it really feels. The initial area you go through is a decommissioned missile silo, and it's here you can find your companion for the DLC, an iBot. I think the choice for an iBot as your companion was based on the overwhelming positive reaction to Eddie in the base game. One of the most useful companions, and the person who makes sure that nobody ever takes Rex. Is it the same as our Eddie? Kinda. It remotely cloned Eddie's personality onto itself, and at the end of the DLC, all of his upgrades transfer to Mojave Eddie, so really you can treat him as the original or not, it's up to you. After getting out of the silo, Eddie is hijacked by a new character named Ulysses, who is the most important character across all of the DLCs. Ulysses has been present in every single DLC up to this point in some way. He's first mentioned by Christine in Dead Money, is present alongside Christine and Elijah in Old World Blues, and is even the source of inspiration for the Whitelegs in Honest Hearts. As a former Caesar's Legion Fumentari, he was the one who led the attack on New Canaan and trained the Whitelegs, who braided their own hair to match Ulysses. This, however, was a massive insult to him, since they were just imitating the culture of his own tribe, the Twisted Braids, without understanding their history. This event is what would lead Ulysses to leave the Legion, and would eventually have him come upon a new settlement called the Divide, which we were actually helping to develop as a courier, transporting supplies so the Divide could flourish. He saw the Divide as the last hope for the Wasteland, a way to merge the NCR and Legion into a greater whole. This want is actually where his name comes from. It's not based on the ancient myth, but rather Ulysses S. Grant, the US president at the end of the Civil War who brought two nations under one flag. One day, though, the courier, who is you, brought a package to the Divide which unknowingly set off a nuke cache hidden underground that completely destroyed the Divide and left it in the way we find it now. Destroyed by the loss of his new home and newfound hope, Ulysses would end up pinning all the blame on you, and orchestrated everything from the shadows to bring you to this point, down to orchestrating the platinum chip delivery mission that got you shot in the head in the first place. Ulysses is without question the most divisive character in New Vegas, one of the most controversial characters in Fallout period. To lay out why people are so mixed on him, we have to establish a few things first. Ulysses is the only other character you meet in the DLC, which not only means he's really your only option for conversation, he also gets a DLC's worth of dialogue to himself. The structure of Lonesome Road is essentially this: action set piece, Ulysses speech. Action set piece, Ulysses speech. It follows this formula at least 3 or 4 times, and it leaves him as this inevitable roadblock that can break the flow of action. Ulysses is also not a curt man. It makes sense why he makes audio logs and leaves them everywhere. The man is in love with the sound of his own voice. His speeches border on Old World Blues length, and that can make it extremely frustrating when you take in what he's actually saying. Ulysses is a very romantic speaker. He loves himself a metaphor or illusion. It's a common critique of Ulysses that he speaks in riddles. So you have somebody who talks a lot, for a long time, in confusing ways, but oftentimes doesn't feel like he really has a lot to say. One of the biggest memes to come out of New Vegas was Ulysses' very frequent use of the term the bull and the bear when referring to the Legion and NCR, because he uses the phrase a lot. Bear and the bull and the bull and the bear and the bear and the bull and the bull and the bear and the bear and the bull and the bull and the bear and the bear and the bull and the bull and the bear, and oh my god, there has to be other animals! The biggest thing that turns people anti-Ulysses, though, is the feeling that he forces a background on the player. The idea that we were instrumental in the creation and destruction of the Divide and simply don't remember is a very hard concept to make work in New Vegas specifically. New Vegas got a lot of praise for not giving the player a set backstory like every other Fallout game. So to say there were events that we participated in without any player input is frustrating. In the main game, when a piece of background is presented for the courier, it's our choice whether or not to embrace it. Like when meeting the Lonesome Drifter in the base game and remarking he might be our son. That was a choice made by the player made to inform their backstory. The story Ulysses lays out also isn't going to apply to how everybody plays their courier. Depending on the choices you've made and the story you've made for yourself, role-playing in a role-playing game, maybe the version Ulysses presents makes 0 sense. A result of this is that Ulysses is kind of just right about everything. There's no way to refute what he's saying, since if you do say, "No, I don't have any memory of that. I would remember blowing up an entire town," Ulysses says,
"Oh, yeah. That's what I thought you'd say."
Add on to that the hostility that Ulysses has for us off the bat for events we weren't involved in as players, and storyline-wise, weren't even that responsible for.
What do you want from me? I probably wasn't even there. How do you know I was involved? Oh, the kings, you better investigate them. Oh, check this out. Hey, check this out. Oh, yeah. Oh, mama, I'm gonna nuke the divide. Oh, yeah. Sounds plausible, don't it?
A lot of people, as a result, say Ulysses is a poorly written character or that he's a self-insert for writer Chris Avallon, since his goals line up with what Chris Avallon has said he prefers Fallout to be. Well, I can't defend Ulysses having a 10 in all of his special stats, because before this DLC, the only character who had that was Frank the Tank Horrigan from Fallout 2. Charisma and intelligence might be up for debate, but maybe it's a physical charisma and intellect in how to make somebody's head fit up their own ass. The Enclave had a genocide planned for the entire wasteland, and it was let Frank Horrigan walk in one direction uninterrupted. I will push back on Ulysses being a poorly written character, though. I think that what he's saying, past the verbiage he uses, is a pretty interesting look at grief. Ulysses put all of his stock into the divide. He left his old life behind and walked towards the future. And his future was destroyed. He has nothing left and is trying to put a greater meaning to what happened. His world couldn't have been taken from him by accident. There has to be a reason for why he's suffering. The sad part is that there isn't. Everything that happened was just a case of wrong place, wrong time. Not even the NCR who sent the detonator knew what was going to happen. They just sent it to the Divide because it looks like Divide stuff. Ulysses can't take revenge on the whole NCR though, because he's just one guy. So the only option he has left is to shoot the messenger. Breaking down Ulysses' story honestly makes him sound pathetic. He's trying so hard to make this a battle of mythological proportion with his talk of sleeping giants, when really he's just fist-fighting the mailman. People say his plan of nuking the NCR makes no sense, since his answer to his suffering is to cause more suffering. But yeah, it's a bad plan! I think sometimes people give themselves too much credit on how much work they can do to understand a story that doesn't bluntly explain itself. It's trusting you to recognize that Ulysses is wrong because clearly he's wrong. Funnily enough, I kinda feel the same way about Chairman Rose from Pokemon Sword and Shield. It was kinda baffling to see people say, "Why would he start the darkest day early? He's so stupid!" Yeah, he's stupid. He's making a selfish, bad choice for his own ego. So my ultimate opinion on Ulysses is that I think he's an interesting character who is failed by the delivery of his message. It's a bit too frequent without being forward enough to make his message easy enough to grasp. I don't blame people who say Ulysses is just a rambling lunatic because it's really easy to read him that way. He also just suffers from a game-wide problem where any Legion character is kinda hard to side with because they're comically evil. Ulysses, will there still be women pack mules in the new Divide? I've set aside so much time to talk about Ulysses, since not only is he the most notable part of the DLC, he also sets the tone for a few other things in the DLC. Namely, not getting over. Gameplay-wise, Lonesome Road is all action. There are no quests and no side quests. There's getting from one side of the Divide to the other, fighting enemies the whole way through. If your character is focused more on the social skills of the game, like speech and barter, just don't even bother, this is gonna suck. Lonesome Road is all combat, and New Vegas can just about keep its pants up when it comes to combat. It's not always accurate, but it works enough. Lonesome Road pits you against the toughest enemies in the game, in the form of Deathclaws, Marked Men, who are ghouls who have had their skin sanded off by the Divide's harsh winds, and a new enemy called Tunnelers, who arrived from deep underground after the bombs exploded. They're fine, I guess. But the game treats them like they're the new hotness. Ulysses says they're going to demolish the Mojave, and the first time you meet them is after they job out a Deathclaw in record time. The old Jurassic Park 3 approach, the best movie ever made. One of the big marquee sections of the DLC is when you go down an elevator shaft with tunnelers attacking from all angles. It doesn't feel very Fallout, which is fine since neither did Dead Money, but Dead Money does horror better than Lonesome Road does action. The marked men fights can be fun, but the tunneler fights are more about numbers than difficulty. It's not about strategy, it's about how much ammo you have. Actually, it's funny, since Lonesome Road really encourages stealth, since sniping is the strongest thing in the game. The divide is wide open, it's easy to find cover, and as long as you stay hidden, the marked men and deathclaws will just keep running around in circles. Christine's sniper rifle from Old World Blues kinda makes the DLC a joke. I don't even have high stealth and was able to kill most enemies before they knew I existed. Other than the walking and fighting, you can find mini warheads to detonate that might have supplies hidden behind them, but after a while you're going to be well stocked enough that you can tackle anything. And then getting rid of the warheads is just marking off a list. Halfway through, you can unlock the Courier's Mile, which is a pure battle arena with high-level enemies and loot. But I mean, where are you using it? In the rest of the Divide? You made it this far, how could you possibly not have everything you need? I've never been a big fan of these sorts of endgame rewards where you get the best gear because, well, it's over, I'm done playing. The endgame versions of these that depend on your final choice also contain 2 more characters with 10 in all their special stats, and we went from 1 to like 4 in a single DLC. Okay, cool your jets. That final choice comes from your confrontation with Ulysses, where you can either fight or reason with him, which I think is also a source of frustration with him. So now you're willing to listen to me? The DLC ends with a marked men raid that you can either fight alone or fight with Ulysses, and then get the option to nuke the NCR, the Legion, both or neither. And after that, Ulysses and you go your separate ways as the final DLC ends. But I mean, the real final boss was a few steps back because you can take a side road and fight the strongest Deathclaw in the game, Rawr. Defeating Rawr allows you to harvest one of his hands and make the unique item, Fist of Rawr. Or if you have Wild Wasteland, you get Fist of the North Rawr. There's one f***ing dork working on this game and I appreciate him. I'm mixed on Lonesome Road. I think that it tries a lot of stuff, and can only just about pull them off, but not to a spectacular degree. Simply good enough. Ulysses is an interesting character that is going to frustrate a lot of players. The gameplay is frenetic, but you can feel the engine heaving to try to keep up with it. The additions it makes to the series' mythos are kind of cool, but also I feel a little too destructive, I guess? Like, tunnelers being able to wipe out humanity is a bit big for Fallout, you know? I could even see Honest Hearts being put above this in somebody's DLC ranking if you really don't like Ulysses, because you've spent 3 DLCs building him up, and now it's wasted. Me personally, I liked the gameplay just a bit more than Honest Hearts, but the more I think about Joshua, the more danger Lonesome Road is of being overtaken. As far as finales go, yeah, not my favorite. To answer the question from the beginning, of if Fallout New Vegas can match the previous game's DLC in terms of quality, I think it passes with flying colors. Every DLC has its rough edges, obviously, but I think they still stand as sterling examples of what can be done with downloadable content and how much a game can change and feel like a whole new experience. The DLCs don't always hit the mark, but they should be commended for just how much new stuff they try. I'd rather really experimental DLC like this to ones that just feel like another level or mission. As for the ranking, should be obvious for me, but it goes Honest Hearts, Lonesome Road, Dead Money, Old World Blues. I don't think there's anything radical in that ranking. It's a pretty common list, save for swapping Dead Money and Lonesome Road, depending on how much you like Ulysses, and hate stealth.
Oh, he didn't mention all of the DLCs. He didn't mention Gunrunner's Arsenal or the Courier's Stash.
That's what you sound like, dumbass. And as for Mr. President, after making it back to the Mojave after weeks of travel, she learned that life was too short for regrets like Ulysses had. So she's going to make sure she has no loose ends. Hey, remember when you told me I couldn't do something? Bitch.